Hola, hola. Okay, guys, yesterday in class we talked about Gustar verbs, and we know that there are a lot of verbs in Spanish that follow this structure. So let's take a look at Gustar. We think that Gustar means to like, but it doesn't really mean that. It means to be pleasing. What? Me gusta el sombrero. It translates as I like the hat, but what it really means literally is that the hat is pleasing to me. So I want you to take a look here. The hat is pleasing to me. It doesn't say I. So me is not the subject of the sentence. What is doing the pleasing? The hat. Since the hat is doing the pleasing, that's what's going to conjugate the verb to please, which is gustar. To me is the indirect object. I am receiving the action. So it's a very simple sentence that's backwards, and that's what makes it confusing for us. I like the hat is not yo gusta el sombrero. If it was, then it would say yo gusto el sombrero, and gustar does not work like that. We have to say me gusta el sombrero. In other words, the hat is pleasing to me. The subject is el sombrero. It is not me. Gusta is the verb, and it's being conjugated by el sombrero. So I want you to think now, what would happen if it is los sombreros? What box would it be conjugated in? Me, the red, is the indirect object. And what is the indirect object pronoun? Or the indirect object? It receives the action. Okay, great, I get it. So it's me gusta la película, me gusta mi computadora, me gusta la clase de español. But what if I want to say somebody else likes it, or it's pleasing to someone else? Well, we can do that. We can say me gusta, te gusta, le gusta, nos gusta, os gusta, les gusta. You will notice that these pronouns here are pretty much the same as the reflexive pronouns, with the exception of le and les. Those are replaced by se with the reflexive pronouns. And let's take a look at these. So, me gusta, to me. Something is pleasing to me. Te gusta, something is pleasing to you. And you can see the rest of those there. Okay, so we see the construction here. The verb and the noun never change. These are the ones that match here. Where students go wrong with this verb is they think that this me or te or to whomever it's pleasing is what's conjugating this verb gustar. It's not. As soon as you can wrap your head around the fact that whatever it is that you like, whatever it is that is pleasing is the subject, and that's what's conjugating your verb, you'll get this down pat. So let's take a look here. Me gusta el sombrero. Te, le, nos, os, les. Those guys have nothing to do with the verb gusta or the sombrero. It just means that they are receiving the pleasure of the hat. If it's not pleasing, how do I say I don't like it? Well, it's really hard. Hold on to your seats. You just put no in front of it. And the no goes before the me or the te or the le or the nos, os, or les. Now, we talked earlier, what happens if we have more than one sombrero? Remember again, los sombreros, this is what's conjugating this verb gustar. So think about that. If you were to look at los sombreros and say that they're pretty, for example, let's take gustar out of it and let's form a sentence with los sombreros are pretty, then you wouldn't say los sombreros es, the hat is. You would say los sombreros son because you're conjugating the verb ser in box number 6. So it's just a backwards verb. Imagine that gustar is after los sombreros. That would make more sense, correct? And then again, the part in red, me, that's just who is receiving the action. there's really only two forms to work with, unless you want to walk around saying that you like yourself. And for students who say me gusto, that means you please yourself or you like yourself. So I would be very careful with that. Me gustas, me gustan, or me gustáis, me gustamos, those we can deal with later on. But for now, you only need to work with two forms, gusta and gustan. And it depends on what you like, which will tell you which ones you're going to learn, or which ones you're going to use. Okay, so some things to keep in mind. Singular, one thing, la clase. Or if you have an infinitive that follows gusta, then that is that's going to be with gusta because it's one action. So it is pleasing, the act of dancing is pleasing to me, to you, to her. Drinking and eating is pleasing to him, her, me, you. Here are some examples of plural. The classes are pleasing. The class and the book are pleasing. Let's practice. You should try to stay one step ahead of me on this. Número uno. No me gustan, because it's los zapatos. Los zapatos is plural, and that's what's conjugating the verb. Le gusta jugar el fútbol. That's because it's jugar. It's an infinitive that's conjugating the verb gustar. Número tres, le gusta el queso. Número cuatro, te gustan los dramas. And número cinco, nos gustan. Now I want you to think about this. If I put in here a number 5, this is a typical error for people learning Spanish. They see this nos and they think it stands for nosotros, which you and I both know it doesn't, does it? It stands for us. In other words, the flowers are pleasing to us. But if they put nos gustamos, what do you think they're saying? Okay, número 6. Les gusta hacer ejercicio y levantar pesas. We have two infinitives here, so it's going to be singular. Os gustan los globos. Me gusta la música. Le gustan los libros. Nos gusta hacer la tarea y estudiar. Okay, señora, so I get it. Me gusta, te gusta, nos gusta, os gusta. But what if I say le? How is somebody going to know who I'm talking about? Well, le gusta el sombrero. Who? Él, ella, or usted. What you can add is called a clarifier. And simply, sorry, I'm doing Spanglish. Simply just put a and then me, or a ti, a él, a ella, a usted, a nosotros, a vosotros, a ellos. You get it, see? And that structure, this structure here, this clarifier, can go before everything or it can go at the end. This is used for emphasis or clarity. Clarity in the third person, emphasis in the first person. Okay, so what's the big deal with the a? A él le gusta el sombrero. Well, why can't you just say él le gusta el sombrero? That makes sense, right? Well, I want you to think about what él, how that would conjugate gusta, and how would sombrero conjugate gusta, gustar. Both of them would be gusta. So is the hat pleasing him or is he pleasing the sombrero? We're not sure. A él clarifies the le, so it's the indirect object. So we can't have él and sombrero be the same subject. So we use the a beforehand to say to whom it is pleasing. So for example, número uno, a mí me gusta beber. Número dos, you should try to stay one step ahead of me on these. Nos gustan. So remember that here the nos and nosotros, a nosotros, go together. And gustan and fiestas go together. These are backwards verbs. A ella le gusta. How about a ti? Hopefully you said te, and then we have botas. That would be gustan. Cinco. A ellos les gustan. So we have el otoño y el invierno, which is what's conjugating the verb gustar. Número seis. Te gusta. A vosotros, which means to you guys, the lemonade is pleasing. So os gusta. A Juan, le gusta. A usted le gustan, because it's las hamburguesas, and that's going to conjugate it as gustan. And number 10, a ustedes les gustan las ciencias. It is more common to place the thing that is pleasing after the verb gustar, but it's also possible to place it before, which is probably what you've been thinking, like, why do these have to be written backwards? Me gusta el sombrero me gusta. So both can be used. Me gusta el sombrero is more popular. This can be confusing though in the third person. Al perro le gusta el gato. El perro le gusta el gato. So we're not sure. We have to pay attention to the a here if we reverse it to see to whom the cat is pleasing. The cat is pleasing to the dog, or the dog is pleasing to the cat. And you can see here with the a on perro that the dog is pleased. And here the cat is pleased. So how can you know the meaning? The al. So the cat is pleasing to the dog and the dog is pleasing to the cat. You can see these two constructions here. Al perro le gusta. And the yellow goes together. Le gusta al gato. And the part in blue is your subject. That's what's conjugating the verb. Okay, let's practice these real quick. So, las personas no blank blank a los monstruos. So is it A or B? Monsters are not pleasing to people, or people are not pleasing to monsters? Well, if we look at the a, that tells you to whom are not being pleased. That people are not pleasing. So we're going to say les gustan. And the answer is B. People are not pleasing to monsters. And you can see this to, that corresponds to this a los monstruos. Número dos, al perro no blank blank el gato le gusta. So the cat is not pleasing to the dog. Número tres. And then a few more examples. See if you can get these on your own. You can pause the video if you want to write down your answers. And then you can double check. I'm going to go ahead and continue here. Okay, so in number 10, you have to tell me what the English is. The woman is pleasing to the man. In other words, the man likes the woman. Número 11, el perro grande le gusta al perro pequeño. So the big dog is pleasing to the little dog. And the last one, a los caballos, horses. Are they pleasing to the other animals, or are the animals pleasing to the caballos? So les gustan, and the other animals are pleasing to the horses. Okay, just to finish up here, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, there are many verbs that follow the same pattern as gustar. I just call them gustar y amigos. So the verb disgustar, well, that's how you say to dislike. You notice you see the verb gustar in there. Doler, that's how you say that things are hurting, to be painful. I could say, la cabeza me duele. So the head is hurting to me. I'm receiving the pain. Encantar. This is the verb to love, but not in a romantic sense or a spiritual sense. It means to love as if I would say, oh, I love chocolate. Faltar, to lack. We have fascinar, to fascinate. Importar, to matter. Interesar, to interest. And molestar, to bother. Okay guys, I'm going to put this PowerPoint on Canvas for you to practice with if you want to. However, there is an activity on Canvas that you need to complete, and it is due by the end of class today. The grade that you get, depending upon the effort that I see, will be the grade that counts unless there are some mitigating circumstances. So, adiós, nos vemos muy pronto.